Pastor Foster, how are you feeling about the Supreme Court's decision to overturn DOMA?
The decision to overturn DOMA and to disregard Proposition 8 is a great day. I'm personally very happy about it because for the first time I will get to file a joint tax return with my wife, which is, you know, as far as taxes go, pretty exciting. But at the same time, they did not do as much as they could have done. The way the decision had been written in California, I understand the point about standing, but I also agree with Elena Kagan, Supreme Court Justice Elena Kagan's decision not to reject the case, because they could have decided to take the case and to expand on marriage for everyone nationally. They did not do that. I think the Supreme Court didn't have the courage to do that. But what happens now is, in some places, we are completely legal and completely equal, but through the overwhelming majority of the country, we are still not first-class citizens. For instance, if my family and I, my wife and daughter and I, go down to visit my family in Florida, and somebody got sick, there is no guarantee that we would be able to visit each other in the hospital, make decisions for one another if we forgot to bring our plethora of paperwork with us. And so there is an ongoing fight that needs to happen. I'm very grateful. I'm very happy about it. However, there's a lot more to do. And in 2008, when Barack Obama, the first black president, was elected, it was an amazing day. It was stunning. My daughter, who was about 5 years old at the time, and I phoned bank for the president that day. And we were watching the returns, and on the television, they said California has gone for Barack Obama, and then they showed a shot from the Castro district, and they're like, oh, look, there's people celebrating. And they said, no, they're not celebrating. They're mad about their marriage rights being taken away from them. Well, what happened when DOMA was overturned and Prop 8 was overturned was that the day before, the ability for people to securely vote and participate in our democratic process was taken away. And so with one hand, the court gives, and with the other hand, it takes away. And Anton Scalia said that they had no legal standing to overturn this, right legislative decision, except that he had done it the day before when they gutted the Voting Rights Act. And that act was in place because it's still necessary. And so we need to see that the security of persons to vote and to participate in a democratic process must be joined with securing equality for all citizens in this country. Gay people must also work for the security of especially minorities who are being disenfranchised. And so I'm happy. I would have been happier still. We still have a lot of work to do, and if we think that we can be complacent and now rest on our laurels, we are sadly mistaken.
I remember your coming out story and how you had to keep your sexual orientation private for a long time. What are your thoughts about future generations not having to endure those same struggles?
The future generations are not going to have the same struggles that my wife nor I had to undertake. When I was growing up down south around largely fundamentalist Christians, my little Lutheran church never said anything pro or con about gay people. They didn't discuss sexuality, period. It's just not something that was talked about. But the Southern Baptist and other Pentecostals and others, they had a lot to say against gay people. And so I grew up knowing that Jesus hated me, and I had been told that Jesus would prefer me dead rather than gay. And I almost suicided over that because I loved him so much. I loved Jesus so much and just could not, I could not pull together these disparate parts of myself. Today, while there's still homophobia and there's still legislative enshrined law against gay people in various aspects, the reality is we have changed tremendously. The civil rights movement for GLBTQ equality has been the fastest moving movement in the history of civil rights. When the president finally came out at his daughter's prodding, largely, in favor of full equality for gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgendered people, that was a huge step forward. And overnight, entire communities reconsidered their position and changed their position. That was enormous. And we are now winning when we are on the ballot, when our rights are being put up for a vote, which is still wrong. They're rights, they're not votable questions. But we are now starting to win. And the generation of today, my daughter and my wife went to the Gay Pride Parade yesterday, and there were, I was told, just thousands of young people there. Hedrick Martin Institute, the Ali Frenay Center, all of these kids are coming out, and some of them are still facing being disowned by their families, physically assaulted by their families. Still, most of the homeless kids are queer kids, especially queer kids of color. So there are still struggles that they have to face. However, there are now resources and places of safety and sanctuary all over the country, not just on the coasts. There are people who are supportive all over the country, in red states, in red counties. There are people who are still publicly supportive. So we have made great gains. We still have a lot more to do. I said to my daughter the other day, they were showing a commercial for diamond rings, and they were showing a man proposing to a woman. And I said to her, when do you think they're going to show a man proposing to a man or a woman proposing to a woman? The reality is, assimilation is something that we seem to be yearning for. Integration is something we seem to be yearning for. We have to remember, though, that assimilation does not make us safe. Only when we achieve, through legislation and through law, equality, will we have something closer to permanent safety and equality in this country. But those kids, they are standing on my shoulders, on the shoulders of a lot of people who went before me, and they live in a world I don't even think they realize how bad it used to be. That, you know, lesbians were regularly raped by the police. That people married out of desperation opposite-sex persons, that people hid themselves and suicided on, you know, a slow installment plan. That's the reality of what was and what still is for some people. We have a long way to go, but these kids are so much better off because of the work of so many people who have placed our well-being and our very bodies in loving sacrificial service for others to change our policies and to change our culture.
And so, does it get better?
Does it get better? You know, there's something about that campaign that has annoyed me, the It Gets Better campaign. Yes, it got better when I went to college. It got even better when I went to graduate school. It got best when I was ordained and a pastor. It got miraculously just unbelievable when I came out. The reality is you shouldn't have to wait for years for something to get better. We have the power through our moral righteousness to stand up and say, all children, no matter their sexual orientation, the color of their skin, their family makeup, have the ability to expect they will be safe in their persons everywhere, everywhere. Kids do not become bullies overnight. Kids are taught ignorance and hate in their homes. If you see a kid who is a bully, that kid did not become a bully on their own. There's something else going on. And if you want to find the source of it, you will find it in the family itself. When children are all taught to love themselves, respect themselves, and to have manners and all of those things in the home, it makes a huge difference in how they behave in the school. My daughter went through horrible bullying when we moved out into the Hamptons. She had never experienced it in the Bronx, but we come out here among the privileged and the elite, and people just were not accepting of a new person. Not because she had two moms, but a new person. And then they also started questioning her sexuality. And you know, because she has a strong moral fiber, a strong character, because she's just an incredible human being, she stood up as best she could to those bullies and held her ground. But it was too much for her. And the inaction and unwillingness of the administration to acknowledge the truth, there's a problem in the school, and then do something about it before the word sue and lawsuit came up, was abhorrent. And so it gets better. Yes, it does get better. You shouldn't have to wait until you graduate from high school or graduate from middle school for that to be the case.
Absolutely.
Well, right now, we have a new scapegoat, Paula Deen. I'm a Southern woman. I understand completely Paula Deen. I can sound like her and eat like her. But when she was asked if she had ever used an N-word, she said, well, of course. Well, of course she had. I had too growing up. It was just in the water of the culture of the time. It's how one spoke. And when I went away to college, I started taking classes on social stratification, race and ethnicity, criminology, all these different classes. And I was challenged by what I was being taught, but most importantly, I was having genuine and equal friendships with people who were people of color, of various colors. American Indians, American blacks, those sorts of things. And so what happens is we change our prejudices, our fears, and our hatreds when we develop relationships that are genuine. Jimmy Carter has said in his lifelong commitment to building housing, Habitat for Humanity, it is one of the few places where a person of means and a person who really is of poverty are on equal footing doing equal work. And in that setting where they are stripped of everything that identifies them as one who has and one who has not, they can actually come together in genuine unity, doing working towards a shared objective. And so it's hard to get into the homes, that's just the reality. However, Dr. King said, and I think I said this before, in the end, it is not the words of those who hate us that we will remember, but the silence of our friends. We, clergy, politicians, entertainment persons, professors, all of us have an obligation from a position of freedom and security and knowledge. We have an obligation to use these blessings we have as a blessing for others, whoever the other may be. It doesn't have to be a person like us, our same religion, nationality. It doesn't have to be the same. Jesus said, the one to whom much is given, much is expected. And so as a person who comes from privilege and freedom and the ability to speak and to have a voice, I have an obligation to speak out on behalf of the people that nobody else wants to listen to. There are no voiceless. There are people we don't want to listen to. So to speak out on their behalf, to stand up for against inequality and racism and homophobia and misogyny and all those things that diminish and demean the other person. We have to restore one another's humanity. That is our job. There's a story in 3 of the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, where a woman comes and breaks open a jar and anoints Jesus' feet. And she was a woman who was a known sinner, someone who wasn't supposed to be there. And they were in the Pharisees' house, and the Pharisees were the religious right ones, the correct ones, the well-off ones. And Jesus is there eating with this Pharisee. And this woman is an intruder. She comes in, she wasn't invited, she was not wanted, and she was known to be somebody no one should have anything to do with. And Simon, the Pharisee, is thinking to himself, if Jesus just knew what kind of woman this was, he wouldn't let her be touching him. And Jesus asked the most dumb and absurd question you could possibly ask. He asked everybody there, do you see this woman? They'd all seen her. Everybody was aghast. They were horrified. I mean, this is going to end up on TMZ Jerusalem, you know? They could not believe what was going on. It was so dishonoring. But Jesus didn't ask, do you see the obvious? He invited them to behold her. Do you see this woman? She has kissed me. She has anointed my feet. She has extended hospitality. She has extended love to me. And what he did in that moment was insist that they see her as an equal child of God. He restored her humanity and her place in the community. We have to do that too. Whenever there are injustices, we must speak up. Whenever there is the assumption that someone is less than, we must tell the truth. I preached yesterday, in part, on Galatians 5, for freedom Christ has set you free. Do not fall back into the spirit of slavery. And Paul goes on to talk about the works of the flesh: fornication, licentiousness, jealousy, enmity, strife, anger, versus the works of the Spirit: peace, joy, love, patience, and generosity. And I talked about the Trayvon Martin murder case going on down in Florida. And the guy, George Zimmerman, is not on trial. The girl who was testifying was put on trial. And people were making fun of the way she spoke and her inability to read cursive and all of this stuff. I've testified in court cases. It's intimidating and hard, and I'm well educated and white and privileged. This girl, she was being torn apart and made fun of because her diction was different. She can't read cursive writing. The reality is she wasn't supposed to be on trial, but we put her on trial. And when black people don't behave the right way in a public setting where we think they should, they get put on trial. So the problem with her was not her, but was us. You know, when they do a minstrel show, like when the guy got the woman who came out of the house where the 3 girls had been kept hostage in Ohio, and he said, you know, I was eating my McDonald's, and everybody just loved that. But he also said something really important. He said, I knew something was wrong because this pretty little white girl ran into a black man's arms. That's a really good critique right there. Forget McDonald's. He was having lunch. He rescued this white girl from the hell she had been imprisoned in. So, I don't remember what your question was.
I said, how do we get into the homes? Right?
Oh, how do we get into the homes? So the way we get into the homes is by relationships. Little kids play with other little kids. They don't care what color or gender the kids are. They just want to be friends with each other. And so we can learn from the little kids. We just need to be friends with each other.
I was incredibly happy when I heard that my parents were equal to other people. And I had a sign at the Gay Pride Parade, my parents are legal now, which everybody thought was hysterical. And I was incredibly happy when I heard this. And so basically I had a little party in my own room, and I was just really happy.
How come you were so happy?
Well, my parents were going to be equal now. They weren't going to be treated differently than other people. Sure, there's going to be a few people that are going to be feeling like gay people shouldn't belong, but they're equal now. I was excited by how many people were there. There was hundreds and hundreds of people, and there was lots of groups during the parade, and the parade went on for 4 hours, 4.5 hours maybe. And my other mom yesterday, she took me to the Pride Parade, and when we were leaving, she said, is it just me or does the whole world seem gay? And I was like, I think it's the second one. There was so many people there. I would probably say treat everybody equally, because I know there's going to be some people who won't accept gay people or different people of any kind. I know there's people still like that out there in the world right now. So kids, I would say make sure you treat everybody equally. And if you still feel like people that are different aren't exactly really fitting in at all and you don't like them, you have to at least treat them with respect. You don't have to accept them, but you have to treat them with respect. Well, what happened was the first year I kept it completely secret, and at the end of the year I started telling my parents everything. I was afraid it was going to make it worse if I told my parents, because then they would tell the teacher and the teacher would tell the kids, and then the kids would start bothering me more. So I was scared when I told my parents, and they said, Zoya, you need to tell us everything. So later that year, on the bus, I told them everything that happened. At school, I told them everything that happened. They went to the school at least like once a month, demanding that they would take care of the bullying. And they said that the teachers and the principals said that they would, but nothing really happened. I got sent to guidance counseling every day before lunch for like 5 minutes, and I would get my lunch early and I would spend the whole lunch with them. And so that took care of the cafeteria problem, so I wasn't sitting alone every day, but I was still having problems on the bus. So what it was is the little kids sat up front of the bus and then the bigger kids sat in the back. And it was basically the bigger kids that bothered me a lot, so I would sit up front with the little kids. So that kind of took care of it, but that didn't stop it at my classroom. My classroom, I got to sit next to the teacher, but when the teacher wasn't around, I would be pushed and shoved out of line, and I would be picked on, and it wasn't really fair at all. And during recess, I wanted to stay inside. I got to stay inside like once a week with my teacher, and I would hang out near my teacher almost every recess, but sometimes I would go by the swings, and that's where it also happened too, and I was alone. Nobody would come to me. People treated me like I was a freak. It was really sorry.
That's awful.
People would spread rumors about me, and one of them I overheard from a girl that was spreading the rumors, but she said that she was my friend. She was like a two-face. She said that people were calling me freak and gay, and I didn't like that because they thought that I was gay since my parents were gay, and it just wasn't fair at all. So basically no one would come near me because of those rumors, and I was alone. A lot better. I'm going to a different school, and everybody is treated equally, like the whole world. There is different kinds of people there. All of our teachers are nice. Nobody's mean to me. I am feeling a lot better. I have friends. It's good. Honestly, I don't really know. I mean, most people have a mom and a dad. So imagine yourself having your mom doubled. It does mean that both of them cook biscuits and pancakes and stuff, so I have a lot of biscuits and pancakes in the mornings. And really, it's just a little bit different from everybody else, but there is no best part, there's no worst part, it's just the same as everybody. This. I get in the newspaper a lot, I get interviewed a lot, but there's kind of teeny weensy problem. She hauls me wherever I go. I have to go to every single meeting, and most of the time it's a big responsibility. So, this is good part, meetings are bad parts.
My name's Lisa Votino-Tarrant. When we were trying to pass marriage equality in New York, I worked for the Human Rights Campaign. I was, out of the 30 paid organizers, I was the only straight married organizer, which apparently is the pretty cool fact. I don't know, everybody kind of gets a kick out of that. But this was actually one of my husband's big issues. I'm a community organizer, but, and I work on civil rights and human rights issues, but LGBTQ equality is really the forefront of his mind. And I don't know necessarily why. It's just something he's always felt really passionate about. And we're in an interracial marriage. So up until Loving v. Virginia, our marriage wouldn't have been recognized in all 50 states. So for us, trying to help other couples then have the same love and respect and equality that people before us had achieved was really important to us. So I was the paid organizer, but my husband was with me through 98% of the things I was doing. And we were bringing our dog to Petco and putting equality scarves on him. And we were doing anything we could to get signatures and people to call their senators. And it worked. It was fabulous. The only, really, I think, after all that hard work, the one thing that really that was a big disappointment for me was that all 9 white male Republican senators from Long Island didn't vote for it. We did turn 3 Republicans from Westchester, upstate, so that's how it ended up passing. But our local assemblyman is a huge proponent, and he really helps out with a lot of these issues. So, you know, there are positive things to take away from that. We just kind of gloss over, and, you know, I remind everybody each election that that's exactly how that went down in the end. So that's our story.
Well, there was lots of people there, and we all were holding up signs and dancing around a little bit. And basically, people would honk their horns whether they supported us or if they were one of us. And so it was really fun to see how many people honked their horns. And about 2 blocks away, my mom, when she was driving me over there, she started honking her horn, beep, 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 like over and over and over again, until we finally got there and people were just like shouting and cheering. And so we pulled up in the driveway and we got out and everybody was still shouting and cheering and dancing, holding up signs and yelling. There's poster boards and markers. So you would draw on the poster board what you wanted for the sign. You'd hold it up and you would be yelling and say, "Hey, go Gays, come on." And people would honk their horns, and it was a lot of fun to see how many people were there.
Well, it all came about because of Lisa Vittino Tarrant. I'll give you back to her.
Who got it from somebody else? When the arguments were being held in D.C., national groups had joined together to do this Light the Way to Justice rallies across the country. And so when they were doing the arguments, we did a rally here. And we were getting pretty interesting feedback, like, you know, the plumbing trucks and construction and the buses and UPS trucks, they were all honking and giving us, you know, thumbs up. And yeah, I mean, where you wouldn't think you would get that support. So then when the national organizers reached back to the local organizers to say, hey, could you guys do like this quick notice as soon as the decision comes down rally? So we were sort of like in this holding pattern because we knew when the end of the session was, we didn't know which day we were going to hear it. And so we created a Facebook group, and every day we had to keep updating, you know, like not today, tomorrow, watch at 10 a.m. But it was great. And the really cool thing about both rallies for me was that I didn't know everybody there. And especially the Happy Decision Day one, there was lots of young people that showed up. And I just, as an organizer, it's nice to sit back sometimes and realize, you know, like I'm here and I'm in front of a camera, but I'm just that kind of face, you know, that is out there. It's for those young people that were jumping up and down, and Zoya, who will hopefully be in a much better place and a better atmosphere, and people will stop putting this horrible stigma on same-sex marriage. You know, and it always starts with the laws. You know, nobody really blinks an eye at interracial marriage anymore. You know, my grandmother, I'm sure, probably is rolling over in her grave. But, you know, 2 generations later, we don't think about those things anymore. So hopefully your life's better.
And, you know, Lisa, one of the reasons why she was able to call and say, can we have it in front of the church, is that this congregation is not the only gay welcoming congregation on the East End, but I think it's the most loud about it, welcoming gay congregation on the East End. And so whenever somebody calls and says, hey, we want to do this, it's like, okay, let's do it. And we had a transgendered person come, and instead of me preaching one Sunday, they came and delivered the sermon one Sunday. We have rallies out front. We have these various things because this congregation sees as its Christian mission that we are to be voices for justice and righting of wrongs, especially when it comes to gay, lesbian, bisexual, and transgendered persons. So that's, you know, another reason why it was possible to have it here. There's a congregation on the way out of town right now that has a quote up from Genesis: "The men of Sodom were filled with wickedness." And I really want to go and rearrange the letters or something. However, I'm pretty sure that would not be the best Christian witness I could give, and I'd probably get caught. But, so the counteract to that is to have a bunch of gay folks and gay allies dancing around with flags, honking, and having a good time in front of the church with a cake that said, "Yay, equality." It's just, we're the ones who are having fun, as opposed to the men of Sodom were filled with evil. Because, it's a joy to recognize that, you're human and equal, and this never had been the case before.